Hello, my name is Zachariah Van Sliders with Old Man Gaming, and this is another horrible game review. Before we get into it, as usual, let's do the disclaimers. Number one, I'm a house dad. I don't do this professionally, so you might hear me pause or make a weird statement, or maybe hear some background noise. I can go back and edit it, because, Number two, I don't give games scored reviews. I don't believe in them for games, because I believe games is one of the most subjective forms of art out there. So what you'll get from me is you'll get an overview of what the game is, then you'll get a pros and a cons list from my point of view, as all reviews are, and then you will get whether or not I'm going to continue to play it past the reasons for this review, whether or not I'm going to stick with it. And then finally, I don't do a review all the way through like most other larger markets with a lot of money to throw at this, because like I said, I don't have the ability to do that. So this is kind of an everyman's flash point of view on this. I've only usually gotten, sometimes I've only gotten as little as 5 hours. I mean, sometimes I get more, but just keep that in mind. So today we're talking about a game that just dropped to Games Pass last week, around Wednesday or Thursday, and that game is called Indivisible. I would say this is an RPG, but this is a very hard game to classify, and we're going to get into that. First, let's go over the story. It's a very simple anime kind of RPG type story in which you're this girl, she's got kind of a mysterious past and family life, village gets burned to the ground, and she's got to go off on an adventure, collecting pals along the way as she goes. The way they do that, though, is very, very interesting. So, I mean, that's basically the story. It's a very straightforward story, at least so far as I have gotten into it. The interesting part of it is how she collects her party. She doesn't understand it, at least not yet in my game. I'm sure you figure it out by the end of it. But she absorbs people. She just starts absorbing people into, like, her inner realm, which is, like, I don't know, like a Kirby-esque void where they can just, like, all live on an island in her head until she needs them to either talk to people or fight for her or whatnot. So anybody who agrees to join her immediately gets, like, turned into light and sucked into her face. Which, right off the rip, that makes this a very interesting and different game. And not to spoil too much, but the first person she sucks in is a rather antagonistic character. So right off the bat, it causes these two to be stuck together, and that's an interesting dynamic to play at the beginning of the game, which is good because the beginning game is probably the weakest part of this game because you haven't unlocked everything the game has to offer. It's going to look a little dull at first. So, what this game is combat-wise. So when you enter, first of all, the game is platforming normally. It's a side-scrolling platformer right off the bat, which I found very interesting. I didn't expect that from a game like this. What's even more interesting is the side-scrolling platforming parts are actually really well done. I know this should probably be in the pros, but it just fits better here. The jumping it still requires skill. It's not too hard, and the attacking enemies, which you'll see them as side-scrolling, if you can manage to hit them with your attack before they hit you, you get the jump on them, and vice versa. So it makes it very interesting. It makes it kind of like, a Mario or a Sonic type game until you hit those bad guys, and then it turns into this weird comboing RPG system. And the comboing RPG system, okay, so I'm just going to define it because it's very hard to compare it to anything. Basically, you have 4 party members, including your main character. She can't be changed out, the other party members can. You don't get them all right away. You have to move through and find them in the story and collect them. They do a pretty good job of getting you at least 4 within the first 5 or 6 hours. What it does is it immediately assigns a button to one of those characters for your 4, as far as the 4 attack buttons. So X is your main character, Y is your top screen character, and they coincide with where the buttons are on the controller. So B is, your character to the right, and then A would be the bottom character. What happens then is you can press the directional button up, down, or left, right is one command, and that attack button to make that character do a different move. And you can chain them together in this way that almost has this strange multi-person fighting mechanic. And they really spent a lot of time on this. And so, like, you'll end up against a bad guy who has an armor guard ability, which means you have to break their armor. And to break their armor, you have to hit them with combinations from different areas. So, like, you have to hit them from, like, top Y, and then bottom Y, and then top Y, and then bottom A, you know, and you just have to keep, like, chaining them together in these combos until their guard breaks, and then you can wail on them. Another thing I found interesting is every character's directional works differently. So you collect one character who's a swordsman. If you press down Y, he doesn't attack. He just stores up the attacks for damage later. And then he juggles really well because you hit up Y and it hits the person and it knocks them into the air, and then you can send in other people to, like, juggle the character. Your main character has kind of a wide range of even maneuvers. She can attack from every angle, every level. She's pretty straightforward. Then you have, like, a healer who doesn't exactly attack. She actually, like, throws potions at her friends to heal them up in battle. But what's even more interesting is this can do damage if you combo her into somebody, and then you hit that, she'll whack them with the potion holder before it hits them. It's very hard to describe. I'm hoping you're seeing some good clips on the screen. But it's very fast-paced. It's very interesting. There is a learning curve to it because you also have to block, and you have to time your block. And you have to time your block by blocking with the person who's being attacked. You can also do a full everybody block because some enemies attack everybody, but it's not as efficient as blocking with one person. So if they're just attacking one person, you want to block with that one person. And they don't give you a lot of time, so sometimes it can get confusing. I can't count the number of times I blocked with the wrong person and got whacked. So the combat system takes a little getting used to. To facilitate this, it takes a while to get into. In the beginning, you can only really attack once with each character. But as you, like, unlock the combat abilities, each character gets, like, 3 or 4 actions right in a row. So you can go top guy, side guy, top guy, side guy, side guy, side guy, top guy, side guy, side guy, side guy, side guy, and just, like, combo them together in these really interesting and nifty ways. Unlike traditional RPGs, there's no equipment loadout, there's none of that. There is just basic, straight-up leveling. And then you can quest for objects, which the objects are almost Metroidvania-like in this game. Whereas, like, you'll be blocked, your path will be blocked in the side-scrolling until you find a bow and arrow, which allows you to shoot a guy who you couldn't get past, which then you can progress. So the maps have this really interesting Metroidvania kind of feel to them. They change, so it's not like just one big map like Symphony of the Night, but each map has that where you'll find areas, you can't get through them, then you can get through them later. One thing that's cool, too, is the maps can be kind of 100%ed right off the bat, so you're not really missing anything, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. So let's go to pros. Positive. This is the most unique game I think I've played. I mean, I know it's 2020 now, but in like a year or so. I'm not saying this is the best game I've played, but definitely the most unique. And I find it really interesting how they managed to merge side-scrolling, platforming, and RPG elements all into this weird kind of action, anime fighting RPG type game. This is just a really creative take on the genre, a really creative take on role-playing games. And I gotta say, I don't know if you'd call this turn-based, but if, like, old Final Fantasy games were like this, if some of the newer JRPGs were like this, I would play those games. Like, I would definitely play those games, because this is a lot of fun. And it gets you just enough of the twitch reflexes in there, with the dodging and the comboing, while still keeping enough of the RPG elements to it, which is it's just really interesting. My next pro is a little technical. This game is pretty. It's real pretty. And I'm not usually a fan of the anime stuff. I've said that on my channel, maybe in reviews or maybe in other places. But this one just, I don't know, it just grabbed me. It's a very pretty game, very well done. As far as the art style and the choices they made on what they're presenting to you visually is absolutely one of a kind. And then my next pro is voice acting. The voice acting is really good in this. Their dialogue written is decent, and there's also a couple of moments where I feel like, I don't know, we'll talk about it in the cons, where the situation was a little bit more dire than the writing made it feel, but the voice actors still present it in a really good way. And also a game like this with text box, with an independent kind of RPG feel, I would say there are some moments where, there is like just text box, but for the most part, everything is voice acted. Like 90% of it is voice acted. That was really pleasant to me, because I know this probably makes me a bad gamer when I see text box. It's got to be a really good game to keep me in, because I can't just read all day. I'm not there. I'm not playing games to read. So it was really nice to have that voice acting in there. One last pro that I feel is worth mentioning in the era of loading times. This game has very little loading times. There is a sizable loading screen to start the game up, and then usually when you're switching a map, there's so much of a loading time. But I tell you, if you die, you immediately respawn at your last save, just like instantaneously. There is no wait time whatsoever, and that was really nice. Really nice to just get right back in, do it again. It definitely kept me around longer than it would have. You know, you die 3 times, you see a loading screen, you're like, alright, I should probably put this down. But it just pops you right back in, you're like, I'm going to take another run at that guy. And that was really nice. So let's switch gears, let's go to the negative, let's go to the cons. Alright, what's bad about this game? There are some bad things about this game, unfortunately. Number one is some of the writing. What I mean by that is, the dialogue is all written pretty well. Nobody's talking weird. It doesn't feel like there was a misstep in translation. I don't actually think this is made by a Japanese studio, even though it's all anime. I could be mistaken on that, though, so don't quote me. Where I'm recording, I can't look it up right now. But one thing I will say is that there are times and situations that are very heavy in this game, like right off the bat. Very heavy ideas, very heavy things that they're putting forward to you. And those things are glossed over by kind of ridiculous anime humor. This game, while I don't like a game to be just a full dredge all the time, it doesn't need to be constantly depressing. I don't mind humor moments. When somebody's dad is murdered, and then the person gets stuck with a person who murdered them. Like they shouldn't immediately be cracking wise at each other. They should really hate each other. And I never felt the hate in that relationship or for anybody. Even the main character's hatred for the evil bad guy who ordered the death of her dad, it feels almost anime silly. And that kind of bothered me. It took away from the moments, like when she finally confronts him in the first half of the game for the first time. It seems like, I'm gonna get you, boop, 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 and that kind of irritated me a little bit. My number 2 con is they really take a while to get into the very complicated combat system, and the reason they do that is this combat system is hard to pick up. It's definitely a different way of looking at things, and as far as I know, there could be a game out there that I haven't played that does this, but this is the first time anything like this has existed, in my opinion, in the ecosystem. So they obviously want to give you time to get used to it, because once it kicks off, it's very hard. Like, if you don't know what you're doing, you die. That being said, it makes the first parts of this game kind of boring. And luckily enough, the voice acting is good enough that it kind of keeps you engaged, but the earlier fights will almost make you feel like this is it. There's really not a lot to them. Of course, like I said, there's no equipping loadouts or equipping equipment. Your character is what your character is. They level up, but they don't get anything new, other than like the Metrovania type movement stuff. So there's kind of this like, okay, I'm gonna get bored of this real fast. Like I said, story kind of keeps you in until it does get good, but it's a very slow burn until you get to that really nice complicated system. Honestly, in my opinion, that's all for the negative. Like I said, I haven't beaten this game, so I can't say that the storyline is good or bad overall. Obviously, I haven't figured out a lot of mysteries, but as far as the game itself goes, that's it. I think it's a pretty good game. I really give this studio props for making something completely unique in a day and age which that becomes incredibly hard to do. It's just very different, very engaging, and I actually urge everybody out there with Games Pass who has the ability to go download this and just try it for about 4 hours. Like, even if you never play it again, just to see what they're doing, what I'm talking about, on the uniqueness of this game, on how all of these, they took, kind of cherry-picked all these genres and stuck them together and somehow made it work. It's kind of one of those things where, whether or not you like the game, it's something you should see. As to whether or not I'm going to stick with it, I definitely am. I definitely want to get through this. I definitely want to finish it. I have some games piling up now because the last couple of reviews have been pretty good, and I said I'm going to stick with them, and I like to keep my promise. But yeah, I definitely want to stick with this. I definitely want to get through it. It is an interesting game, to say the least. So, if you have Games Pass, go out and check it out. Whether or not you have Games Pass, of course, check out everything my channel has to offer. Mondays, reviews, you're watching it, you're listening to it. Wednesdays, my Borderlands 3 playthrough with our resident Borderlands expert and quickly becoming superstar Philbilly 330. Then we also have the podcast every Friday, both audio and YouTube. And then, of course, Phil graces us with his build videos when he gets them. We got 2 of them up right now, and they're big hits for Borderlands 3, of course. So, as long as you guys keep watching this stuff, keep listening to it, we'll keep making it. Thank you very much for your time. I'll see you guys next week.